So one of the failures on one of the battery packs that I wanted to show was it's actually cell 14. You can see how it's swollen compared to the others. It's got a taper. I don't know the inner part of the cell has swollen itself or if it's actually just that state changing sleeve that has changed to that shape, but we'll look into it a little deeper in a few minutes. Careful not to go across your cells. That definitely got hotter than the others. One out of a similar pack was bad. There's a number on it. See, it does look a little bit different. But this is one that overheated as well, but it wasn't near as bad as this one. Now a third one, you can tell the distinct edges like it actually hadn't overheated yet. Yeah, we can see, oh, it'll slide actually off. Slide off easy. No actual number on that cell. Nope, I don't see one. Other than the number they had on it. But that shows the difference. Now both of these cells actually bad cells that had went to 0 volt. They depleted all the way to 0 volts, which I'd be scared of them to actually show like a shorted cell. We can tell this one overheated. Probably the charger probably tried to charge us before it actually killed it. And it just actually heated up. It took most of the current through the one cell out of the 14. That's one thing you really gotta watch. So that's the first one that actually had a actual melted sleeve on it, which I assume the sleeve will still do its job, I guess, correctly, but you can tell it actually looks a lot different. And this sleeve is kind of brittle. Almost acts like a polymer, but you can tell it's got fibers in it. Matter of fact, it's starting to eat my fingers up like it might have a glass cloth type fiberglass fibers in it, but whether it does or not, I don't know. But it does have almost like fiberglass fibers in it. Yeah, I can see it glistening. If you can see it on the camera. But heat wise, you can see the fibers good now. Keeps that melted state for quite a while to absorb the heat. Kind of wonder now what the heat gun will do to it. I'm gonna bring in just a Milwaukee heat gun. Just on a perforated metal case that I have. It is not changing back to a solid right away. Very liquid. I can't help it. I got to make a mess. Yeah, the properties is similar to a plastic, but the plastic would actually be done solidified back and hardened almost immediately on an open air and on a heat sink like this. It's just now starting to solidify again. So it's been about 5 minutes since it was melted. And it is back to a solid again. Still actually has a little bit of the warmth to it. I'm going to solder this battery in this pack. I'm going to replace the cell that's bad. It's the only one I have left in this pack to replace. I do want to talk about safety just a little bit with these batteries. I'm going to pull this cover off. If you can see that, that little, basically just a little paper washer popped off. So just realizing with this, anytime that you are soldering or working around the positive side of a battery, or just be aware of how close the positive and the negative terminal are. Because coming across with the solder nine or letting solder get over here, and you've really messed up, because you basically made a little flare. Especially if the cells are in good shape, like the one that I'm fixing to put in is fully charged. So it's best to actually not have them at that point. If they're a little bit depleted, that's actually good, as long as they're not too far. But make sure that you don't mess up that insulating disc. You don't want to overheat it. And also be aware that this little disc here looks more like paper, and this is just a heat shrink over it. So always keep that in mind when you're soldering. That's why they spot weld at the factory when they put these on. But I've never had any issues soldering even lithium ion batteries. But one thing I do is I go ahead and heat it up quick with a big enough iron. I don't sit there with my regular 25 to 40 watt iron. I go ahead and get the big boy out. We go ahead and put a little puddle of solder on it, and immediately we can use something like the sponge that come with the Hakko iron, just something damp, whether it's a rag, it doesn't matter, and just go ahead and cool that off as soon as you get through soldering it. So just keep that in mind, and we'll get into it. And that got us some solder on both ends. That'll help us a lot soldering the tabs back on when we get it in place. Now always remember the orientation of this. I know that the plus come off here, and that is the plus for the main battery pack. It's pretty obvious on this one, but all of them are not so obvious, so always keep up with the orientation of your battery. Got that side. Now for the positive side. I think that's got it good. Showing that 50 volts on this cell. I think I'll put all this back together and we'll see how it charges. So this is the repair pack with a cell. Cell B14 replaced. One thing I wanted to mention is when you do replace a cell, they need to be equalized as possible across all 14 series cells. Because I was only getting about 55 volts or so after I put a cell in, but I didn't fully equalize them. And even 0.1 of a volt will take it off eventually. It get off bad enough to make a difference. Mine was off 0.3 volts, and what that would do is it would, I think the BMS takes the highest cell. In my case, I put almost a fully charged cell in. The pack was a little depleted, and I thought it would equalize on its own, but with the BMS, but it don't actually look at that. But I don't think, but it does actually. Whatever the highest voltage cell is, it won't charge it above the 4.18 or so. It'll actually stop charging even though the other cells may not be fully charged. And on the other hand, when it discharges, it'll do a similar thing where the lowest actual or most depleted battery, it's going to look at its lowest voltage and it's going to shut the pack off at that level. So just keep that in mind. There's more to it than it seems. Actually keep those 14 cells as balanced as they can be, down to 0.1 volt. That way the pack will run down and charge up correctly, and you'll keep the full capacity of your pack that way. So I just wanted to mention that, to keep that in mind as well. If you are replacing individual cells, whether it's one or several, so just keep that in mind. I just wanted to add this to the end of the video. I noticed when I was soldering in the video, it just didn't do that well. I've never had an issue soldering on batteries, and it took a little more time than I liked. But one thing I wanted to mention is I have switched over to the lead-free solder. So it does make it just a little bit more difficult. It does have to heat up a little more. But overall, I hadn't had any issues with it. I do prefer still using the leaded solder if I can still use it in the multi-core rosin solder. But one thing I should have done on the video, so I wanted to explain it here, is I should have just put a little bit of rosin, just the old rosin flux. I just should have put a drop or so on the tip of the battery. Not a lot, just a little. And it's just a regular rosin flux you can buy. It's just I just keep mine in a dispenser of some kind. I have repurposed little eyedropper bottles, or the little ink bottles are cheap. You buy them online or eBay or whatever. But that'll help a lot with the heat transfer, so we'll give that a shot. Bring the sponge back over. It's going to help a lot in that heat transfer. See how much quicker that is? It's tremendously quicker. It helps with any of it, but especially if you're using the lead free, it's going to help a lot. So just remember, if you do have it, to use it in the process and to save you a lot of time. And I mean, it just keeps the heat away from the battery so much better. So just thought that little tip might help. If you got good information out of this video, just please give it a thumbs up. If you think it's worthwhile, please subscribe. And thanks again for watching.